You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Welcome back to the Cabral Concept. Good to have you with me here today. Looking forward to today's topic of how stress and exactly how stress causes dis-ease in the body. So it's really important that we go over this topic because I know there's a lot of health practitioners. There's people out there saying that stress is one of the root causes for cancer, for many of the diseases that we have in our culture, and for many of the leading causes of disease today. And I completely agree with that. But the problem is this, that a lot of times in natural health, we're not always telling you and explaining to you exactly how this happens. And here's why I think it's important right now, and it's because conventional medicine still refuses to acknowledge what they can't see, touch, feel in a lab experiment. But if they could truly go back to their medical textbooks, and they could look at the pathophysiology of the body and how you can make simple connections to how stress causes the heart disease, stroke, high blood pressure, cancer, etc., autoimmune. We're going to be talking about all of those today. So what I'm going to do is just break it down step by step so that health practitioners can use it with their patients or wellness clients. And you can also bring it to your doctor, or you know what, even besides that, you can begin to use it in your own life. So that's what this is really all about. The Cabral Concept, in my opinion, is hopefully empowering you to take back control of your health. Because at the end of the day, there are a lot of people that you can get help from. There's a lot of books that you can read, and you can listen to this podcast and many others. But at the end of the day and at the end of the week, it has to be you that's putting it into practice. Because even if you get the advice that you could use to change your life, you still need to put that one foot in front of the other. And that's why I go back to that Amish quote. I love the Amish quote that says, as you pray, move your feet, right? So that's one of the best things that I've ever heard is, yes, pray, have faith, all of those things, but you still have to go forward and do the work. And I know there's a lot of people out there right now, and they've been sick for many, many months and many, many years, many, many decades, to be honest, with some of the people that I've seen in my practice. And you're not always going to get better in 3 weeks. And that's just the truth. And that's the thing about my practice is that I don't need to sell you on anything. I don't need to promote anything. That's not what this podcast is all about. So I can tell you, if you're looking for the miracle pill and you haven't been well in 20 years or 30 years, listen, just get to the foundation. Get back to the foundation of what we're going to be talking about today. There's always a reason why. There's always an answer for you. There's no doubt about that. But it might not always happen within 3 weeks or 6 weeks. That's not how the human body works. When you plant a seed in the ground, does it pop up tomorrow? How about next month? It does not. It takes months of the perfect condition. The watering, the nutrients of the soil, and the sun. We need all of those things. It's why they don't pop up during the winter, right? A lot of the things that we're looking for, we might plant them in the fall. Do they come up in the winter? Absolutely not. How about the spring? Typically not, unless it's one of those flowers that's going to bloom during the spring. We're getting them towards the beginning of the summer, and maybe harvest may not even be until August, September. So what I want to look at is I'm going to give you the foundation, the fundamentals today. And I want you to understand that there's a lot of things that health practitioners can do for you. They can give you the proper diet, the proper exercise, they can give you the nutrition, all of those things, right? But what we need to come back to at the end of the day is, are you fighting that process? Not consciously, but are you fighting the wellness process and as well as the weight loss process? Are you fighting those processes each and every day because of the large amount of stress that you're putting on your body? Now, we have to define stress, because stress is not just mental, emotional. That's a big part of it. That's the biggest part of it. I'm not going to deny that. If you are someone that gets angry and stressed or feels overwhelmed or anxious or just angry at life much of the day, or at least throughout the day, that's going to set you back overall in terms of your health and body transformation. And I'll explain why. But the other part is this, is that stress can actually come from, besides the emotions, gut-based issues. So there's something called the gut-brain axis. I've spoken about it before. I do hope that you go back and you tune into previous podcasts. All you have to do is go to stephencabral.com/podcasts. But what happens is when the gut is not at its best, you don't manufacture all of those great B vitamins, which help to buffer stress, or you begin to spill proteins into the bloodstream, which causes inflammation, immune-based responses, and we'll talk about that as well. So we want to make sure that the B vitamins, the neurotransmitters, and the magnesium, calcium can actually be broken down in the stomach and start to be absorbed in the intestines as well. So gut-based issues are a form of stress. And again, I've spoke about 10 of these, right? So inside the rain barrel effect, I gave you the top 10 stressors. Well, yes, it is emotions, it's gut-based. It can also be heavy metals, right? Heavy metals are a big thing that affect the nervous system. So we talk about how it affects the immune system and the brain. Yes, all of that's true. But what about the nervous system? What about the nervous system that gives you energy or takes it away? Or the nervous system that makes you anxious or not, right? Or creates inflammation in your body or not. So we have to look at that. We have to look at the toxins and pesticides in the environment. There's all sorts of toxins. There's all sorts of things that cause us stress. Some are viral based. Some are, when you get a fever or you get stressed from, let's say you have a herpes outbreak or cold sores. That's a form of stress in the body, right? But also the stress most likely precipitated the herpes outbreak or the cold sore, whatever it may be. So I want you to look at this, is that stress. Now, we're not going to be able to get rid of it completely, but we have to know how to manage it. That's the big thing. We're never going to eliminate stress from our life because we're humans being, right? So what we need to learn how to do is simply recognize the stress, not be against the stress, not try to fight the stress, but realize that it's part of our life and that we're not going to let it overwhelm us, that we're going to learn to breathe through it. Just, 2 days ago when I sent out my Sunday email, it was about, the hecticness and craziness of the holiday season. Well, one of the things is this, that's your choice. Like you get to decide how crazy it's going to be, right? You can make the commitments or not. You can begin to, when stress arises, breathe into it. You can begin to look at it with different perspective. And again, I spoke about that yesterday on a Mindset of Motivation Monday. So what I want to do today is just understand that these stressors are a part of our life, but when it begins to overwhelm us, there's a very specific physiological mechanism in our body that actually begins to break us down. And as we begin to break down and fill up that proverbial rain barrel, we begin to show the first signs of dis-ease in the body. So what does that mean? What does it look like? Well, again, I've explained this before, but I want to keep going over that because repetition is how we learn. It's how we all learn. So when we get any of these stressors, whether it's gut-based or heavy metals or toxins, pesticides, the wrong foods, overeating, going too long without eating, and just overall stress, emotions, right? Getting the kids ready or stuck in rush hour traffic, meeting, presentation, any of those things, anything that's stressful. Of course, relationships is a big one. When you're stressed, you get the signal from the peripheral nervous system or the outside of their body or, the gut-brain axis that something's wrong. So what happens is inside of your brain is just something called the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus, its job is to basically kind of take surveillance of everything that's going on. And it gets a message saying, okay, there's something going on. We are in a fight or flight or survival-based stressful time here. So what it does is it produces something called corticotropin hormone, or it's also called just corticotrophin. And what happens is its job then is to signal to the pituitary gland, also inside the brain, to say, now it's time to react. So it's going to produce something called adrenocorticotropin hormone. Now that sends signals. Again, it's all about signaling in the body, because then this is very important, right? Because stress is a signal as well. So this is why signals is the name of the game today. Well, what happens is this. Your adrenal glands, first the adrenal medulla, gets a signal, okay, we need to ramp up the body's fight or flight ability because we may need to run away. We might need to fight. Like something has to happen here, right? So what happens is this. The body starts to do what? Well, it starts to increase heart rate. It starts to increase typically body temperature, at least at first, or this is initial before you get burnt out. It increases blood pressure. How does it do that? Well, it starts to vasoconstrict. It starts to, your body is actually signaled to start to retain sodium, right? So when people retain sodium, what happens? Well, they start to swell, right? The fingers swell, the face starts to swell, body starts to swell. I've spoken about that before. Under stress, your body holds more water. Well, that's because sodium increases and potassium is actually excreted. So sodium is retained and potassium is excreted. That's one really big part of this. But here's what also happens. Gut function begins to diminish. So you start breaking down food as well. Food begins to ferment in the gut. It stays in the stomach much, much longer. You produce less hydrochloric acid typically. There are always times where that could actually be different. Begin to produce less enzymes. The body typically won't drop as much bile. And you start to get what's called increased intestinal permeability. And that just means the cell wall of your intestines, basically it's a big tube that runs through your body. Well, the cell wall actually begins to increase its openings. Now, the openings are always there. It's just the openings in the lumen, so the intestinal permeability is always there, but it becomes larger. And when it becomes larger, well, then typical non-harmful food particles and bacteria and everything that's supposed to be in there, now all of a sudden has a space to move through the gut wall. Well, right next to the gut wall is what's called your gut-associated lymphoid tissue, which all of that basically gets funneled to the liver, and your liver has to decongest all that. Well, now look how much more work your liver has to do. So people, that's why they don't understand liver detoxification. They don't understand functional medicine detoxes. Well, when your body's stressed, or you just have intestinal permeability because of antibiotic use or alcohol or birth control or any one of these things, is that we begin to bring more toxins to the liver. So the liver actually is getting asked to do more and more and more every single year. Well, that's a lot of work on the liver. The other thing is the immune cells begin to attack bacteria or different types of protein that seep through that gut wall. So this is extremely important because what happens? Well, that causes more stress in the body. So we get looped back in to more stress and more inflammation. But the other thing that happens is this. The body begins to increase blood sugar. And I've spoken about that before, I believe. I hope that I have it memorized right now. I think it's episode, let's see, I may not have an episode. Yeah, 957. So I spoke about how stress increases blood sugar. And I do hope you tune into episode 957 if you haven't yet, because that explains how people still gain weight when, they could be eating very little. They could be on a low-carb diet, yet they're still gaining weight. They still can't lose weight. So we have to understand is that the body isn't a fight or flight based mechanism here. Its job is not to burn body fat. Its job is not to get rid of body fat. It's worried that famine, starvation, any of these things could happen. So it's going to start to, of course, lower metabolic rate. That's what can affect the thyroid as well. So the blood sugar begins to increase because the body knows if I'm in a survival based situation, what do I need for a fast fuel source? Well, sure, I'll tap into lipolysis, but breaking down body fat is not the easiest thing to do. So what I'm going to do is just draw some of my glycogen stores from the liver, or if I need to, from the muscles. And that will bring immediate sugar right into the body. And that's what it does, right in the bloodstream. Why? So that your body can work at a fast pace. Because when your body is under stress or, in like basically, think of like an interval-based sprint, your body doesn't even know that, it's just sitting there in traffic or whatever it might be, is that it needs sugar. And so sugar comes to the bloodstream. Well, all of a sudden, though, there's no need for it. You're not running, you're not sprinting, but the blood sugar is still there. So now we can begin to see how blood sugar levels can be elevated under stress, right? Without doing anything, without eating the carbs. Okay. So the other big part, and this is very overlooked. People like to talk about vitamin D and how it makes you hypercalcemic. You have to understand is, first of all, you have to take a normal dose of vitamin D. That's one part. The second part is this. The majority of people have a problem buffering the pH of their blood, and calcium is a great way to buffer that. The other is that calcium gets drawn into the bloodstream. It's a great way to basically vasoconstrict and get your body into sympathetic nervous system dominance by using calcium as that mineral. Well, what happens if you draw calcium into the bloodstream? After a while, where's it going to sit? In your arteries. Is it going to harden your arteries? Absolutely. Absolutely, without a doubt. So how can stress cause cardiovascular-based issues then? Of course it can. It can vasoconstrict and pull calcium in, harden the arteries. Now, even if you don't have a ton of plaque or you don't have high cholesterol, well, that's why 50% of the people still die of a heart attack or some type of cardiovascular-based incident or infarction. And the reason is that they still have that stress there, right? That's why looking at CRP, homocysteine, and cholesterol is something that you look at in totality, right? And yes, you can look at calcium levels. You can look at everything. So when people start to nitpick certain markers, they're missing the overall foundation of the body. And that's why when I get emails in and I get DMs in, I'm saying, I understand all these points that you're making, and they're all fantastic points. But you have to understand there are deeper layers to this, that we're talking about foundational-based health. And you're looking at these like very rare and exotic blood markers. None of that matters until you've literally put yourself through this specific protocol that I'm going to talk with you about. Because the other part is this, is that when you're under stress, your body it can't do it all. So it shifts to what's called the sympathetic nervous system. So your autonomic nervous system, you don't have control over that, right? There are ways to actually modulate that, but you don't have total control over that. Your body shifts in the sympathetic nervous system. Now its job is just to take care of you. That's what it's doing. You put yourself in a stressful situation, right? Now, of course, it may have been unintentional, but you're in a stressful situation. Your body is caring for you. You don't understand that. Like this high blood sugar, right? This weakened gut, this sodium retention and potassium excretion, right? The increased heart rate, the lowering of your thyroid, that is to protect you. It actually thinks that you are in a survival-based state. That's why you have to understand your body is not messing up. You're doing this. You're asking your body to be in a sympathetic nervous system dominant state. And that's the truth. When we begin to understand this, then we can go about correcting the foundational level. And then all these tiny little things that people worry about on blood work, they begin to subside. But the lowered immunity is a huge part to it, because I want to share with you my story as well. Like your body, when it's in the sympathetic nervous system, well, a lot of its first line of defense is going to become weakened. And at the same time, since cortisol is a great anti-inflammatory, but over time it gets weakened, well, inflammatory cytokines just can move right around your blood at will, right? They can start to break down tissue. When we're talking about Hashimoto's, MS, rheumatoid arthritis, we're talking about an inflammatory-based dis-ease, right? What is that doing? Well, each one of those are attacking a certain part of the body. That's when genetics matter. But your genetics wouldn't matter all that much, and the expression of that dis-ease wouldn't matter all that much if it was not put in that position. And that's why we have to look at, again, like I always go back to this. If you have an autoimmune dis-ease of your body, you need to be looking at your gut function. You need to be looking at the thyroid adrenal hormone-based lab, soon to be the complete thyroid 2.0, and the hair tissue mineral analysis. So basically the starter kit, and then do the thyroid adrenal add-on. When you look at, now I'd love you to do the whole Dr. Ball Big Five. I'd love you to look at the omega-3 test and the food sensitivity test as well, and add a stool test to it if you can. The more data, the better. But if you're not able to, I understand, but begin to repair the foundational base level. And we're going to look at that from an overall lifestyle perspective as well, because that is one of the places to start. But I hope that you can begin to understand that. If we just go back to it again, the increased heart rate, right? The increased blood pressure, the increased blood sugar, the sodium retention for the swelling of the body, the slowing of the thyroid, the potassium excretion, the calcium being brought into the bloodstream and away from the bones. Like osteoporosis is a real thing because of stress, right? And pH imbalance. Lowered immunity, right? Or autoimmune-based dysfunction, where part of the immune system might actually be elevated, but it's dysfunctional. An increase in overall inflammation. You can start to see how all of these things are the basis for autoimmune, cardiovascular, high blood pressure, stroke, and cancer. When you're asking me, can we, really get people well? Can we decrease overall mortality? Of course we can. Of course we can. We need to look at, though, stress and then its downhill-based function or dysfunction it causes on the rest of the body. Because now I'm talking about type 2 diabetes. And I'm talking about things such as what I had, which was what? Addison's disease. Well, what's Addison's disease? Lack of cortisol production, right? Lack of cortisol production. Why? Because eventually when your body is so stressed for so long, the receptors begin to go numb to the constant call for cortisol. Because you've been burning out your body. So yes, it's willing to help you to a certain point. But after that, it does get burnt out. There's only so much juice that it can begin to produce. And then it says, no, now we have to actually shut down. We need to go into a deep parasympathetic-based healing state. Now, you may not be able to heal yourself, but at least it's shutting you down. So when people talk about chronic fatigue, myalgic encephalomyelitis, they talk about Addison's disease, which is the lowest level of that, right? Fibromyalgia, brain fog, right? Overall fatigue. What I'm telling you right now is your body is put into that state because of all the issues that preceded it. It's now trying to heal. It doesn't want you to use any additional energy because most likely your gut dysfunction is low or your gut dysfunction is high and your absorption is low. So you're not even utilizing or breaking down all the good food that you're trying to eat. And then people ask me, why would you use supplements? Of course you're going to use supplements in the beginning. You have to use supplements in the beginning. What else are you going to use? You can't break down all of the great vegetables and food that you want to eat. You could juice all day long, and that would absolutely help. But when you're that low, you need to be able to replace those deficiencies very, very quickly. And also, how are you going to get rid of all the candida overgrowth or bacterial overgrowth that proliferated while you're under such stress? Right? And when you're under such stress, your stomach acid goes down. You may have even gotten a parasite. You might have H. pylori because your stomach acid was not strong enough to not allow those things into your house when typically it would have burned those up. So when you have to go in the beginning of a program, it's understood that you need to replace those deficiencies as quickly as possible. And we have to be thankful for traditional Chinese medicine, for Ayurvedic medicine, for Native American-based medicine, all the different types of medicine, herbs that they used. But they were also trying to extract the vitamins as well. Now we can use the best of orthomolecular medicine and functional medicine, blended with the best of Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine to use the best of the herbal and the best of the vitamin-based dosages, not mega dosages, but enough that your body can use and absorb to then be able to take you to that next level. So, when people ask, how is it even possible that you had Addison's disease, you had POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which is essentially, I used to walk up 6 stairs and my heart rate would be literally 150 beats per minute. I would start sweating and getting anxious. I'd have to sit down or lie down on the steps. And, the other part is this, a minor version of that is you get up and you start to just feel lightheaded and dizzy and like you're going to pass out. And then, how did I have H. pylori, SIBO, IBS, candida overgrowth? Well, think about it. I had no first-line defense. I took so many antibiotics as well. That was one more stressor on my body. How did I fail the blood sugar, the glucose tolerance test? Why did I have type 2 diabetes? Think of how much stress I was under for so long and how that was elevating my blood sugar, even though I wasn't overweight, right? So you don't always get type 2 diabetes being overweight. If you're overweight, you do want to lose the weight because that's a huge risk factor as well. Just for overall health, throw vanity out the window. Don't worry about that. Do it for your health. That's what it's all about. How did I have rheumatoid arthritis, right? Well, why did my elbows hurt? Why did my thumbs hurt? Well, the reason is very clear. I had autoimmune-based dysfunction. I had massive gut permeability, but I also had massive immune dysfunction. My immune system didn't know what it was doing, literally didn't know whether it was coming or going. Same with the fibromyalgia and brain fog. It was just massive inflammation and it would move around my body. Sometimes, my gut hurt. Sometimes my shoulders hurt. Sometimes my neck hurt. Then I had flu-like symptoms all the time with myalgic encephalomyelitis. Now you might say, well, that's chronic fatigue. That's that. Well, myalgic encephalomyelitis, though, is it's true flu-like symptoms. We just have a massive intolerance to life. You literally can't do anything that takes expended energy and expenditure because you're so wiped out either that night or the next day. And you just feel like you have the flu. It's one of the worst feelings in the world. I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. So what I'm trying to get everyone to understand is that stress is one of the greatest precursors to disease. Now, you might be working on your adrenals. You might be working on blood pressure. You might be working on minerals. And I would say all of that's true. And I would agree with all of it. But don't forget where it came from. Don't forget that at the deepest level, we're talking about rebalancing that peripheral nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, which is part of the autonomic nervous system. So if you're not working with a practitioner, or you're not working yourself on balancing those fundamental levels, if your blood pressure is high or your body temperature is low or you have low thyroid, yes, we can give you all of the great things to help with that, but you still have to work on it from a deep foundational level so that your body knows that it's not under stress, and that doesn't happen overnight. But it's also why, if you truly want to get well, if you want to go on to live your absolute best life for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, what we need to do is correct the deepest level. And it might not happen in 3 weeks or 6 weeks, especially if you've been sick for a decade. I didn't get well in 6 weeks. That is not physiologically possible for my body to turn around that quickly. Now, I'm keeping my mind open that in the future, maybe it is. Maybe we learn a lot more about energy medicine and we can just switch it. Like we can just change it really quick. But to my knowledge, nobody has that power. Now, there are a lot of people that say they have that power, and I ask them to show me because I'm open to it. Believe me, I want to know this for sure. I want to be able to help someone if I can the same day, right? Turn everything around. But for right now, nobody has shown me that. Nobody can show me that. Not on a consistent basis, right? So what I'm saying is we use the best of all forms of medicine. And I don't believe that anyone could even do it 6,000 years ago. Because why would we have the most, in-depth system of medicine in the world with Ayurvedic medicine? Well, a lot of people don't know that. Ayurvedic medicine, they used acupuncture. They used marmor points, right? They used herbal-based medicine. They even used juicing. They did all sorts of stuff 6,000 years ago. They even did plastic surgery. But people don't know this. But all these things existed. So what we have is a real system of medicine. I wrote about it in the Rain Barrel Effect. I called it the de-stress protocol. And I'm trying to tell you today that you can't work on one thing at a time in order to get well. You need to rebalance the body, not in just one area, right? Not in just one area. Supplements are great. Diet's great. But what about the movement? Right? The exercise, not overdoing it, not underdoing it. We've got the diet, we've got exercise, we have stress reduction, we have toxin removal, we have pushing the body to the parasympathetic nervous system rather than the sympathetic nervous system. We have balancing the emotions. We do have the supplements, and we also have the success mindset, the understanding that you are not defeated, that you will get well. All you have to do is begin to move and put that one foot in front of the other, right? As you pray, move your feet. Hopefully today's podcast was helpful. I'm always happy to answer questions. Any questions, head on over to cabralsupportgroup.com. That's our free private Facebook group. We're happy to help you there. And of course, if you want to make this your life's mission, if you want to share this information with others for the next 24 hours, the Integrative Health Practitioner Certification is also open. And it's my job. It's my mission for the next 30 to 40 years is I want to train as many health coaches as possible. You don't have to have any experience yet. We will train you. If you have experience, even better. But we will train you to be the future of healthcare, in my opinion. All right. Thank you, everyone, so much for tuning in. As always, if this show is helpful, please do feel free to share it with anyone it could serve. Before you go, I wanted to ask you this question. What if I could teach you in just a couple of hours how to transform your thyroid, hormones, adrenal, cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar, weight loss, energy, mood, brain, pregnancy, anti-aging, or many other health-related issues? After 20 years in private practice, after seeing and overseeing 250,000 client appointments, I sincerely feel I have the real-world data and have found the answer you've been searching for. So what I've done is spent hundreds of hours of my own time refining what you need to know in order to uncover your underlying root cause health issues and then begin to rebalance the body and bring it back to a state of robust health and wellness. I'm going to teach you exactly what I do in my private practice so you can understand how you got here and now what you need to do in order to heal. You'll receive all of the important success checklists, protocols, and even ways to customize it to make the program fit your busy life. And you'll get all of this at a fraction of the price. Let me save you the time, money, energy, stress, and frustration of not knowing what to do next. Instead of reading dozens of books on the topic and seeing multiple practitioners, I will condense everything that you need to know in just a few hours of video tutorials that you can watch and listen to anywhere. Together, we will make this healing process an enjoyable one that you can take with you for the rest of your life. I wish you all of the best of health and happiness, and I hope to be able to guide you on your healing journey through my Health Results Accelerators. Simply choose the health imbalance you're currently suffering from, and by the end of today, you'll know what went wrong and how to get well again. I guarantee it. For details, head over now to stephencabral.com/courses.